beautiful sanctuary with all the light and the love that I feel in this building. So thank you for having us. Sometime back when my late husband and I had first gotten married and we moved to Fort Walton Beach from Kansas City, where George had been in ministerial school, we started looking for houses to buy in Fort Walton. And the board president was helping us, and we went to this one house, and the first thing we noticed was that there was a pond that you could see from the backyard, and it had a pool. And we thought, wow, this is great. I spent one winter in Kansas City, and that was way enough for me. I was ready to get back in Florida. And then we went inside the house. And the first thing we saw was the kitchen. And I love to cook, and I was looking around, and there wasn't a lot of counter space, and it seemed a little cramped. But we looked at each other and we said, well, it's a little small, but I think we can make it work. Then we went to the living room. And George had inherited his parents' big antique furniture. We looked around the living room and we went, yeah, it's a little small, but it has a pool and a pond and we can make it work. Then we went on to the bedrooms. Same story. With the big furniture and everything, but guess what? It has a pool and a pond and we can make it work. But then Bob looked at the information on the house along with the realtor, and we discovered that there across the street there was a buffer zone of land, and that fronted onto a busy street past that. And we found out that that land was zoned residential commercial. Oops. I don't think we can make it work anymore. But George and I learned a very, very valuable lesson that day.
Most of us find that life has to be a struggle. We're never taught that it could be easy. At home, we were given moral instruction, for better or worse. School gave us tools for social interaction, and higher education taught us how to make a living. We were never taught how to be happy. We were taught that anything of value had to be fought for. We had to make them happen. We were never taught how to develop high self-esteem or how to be masters of our destiny. We rush through life, never taking time to go inward. We have mindless and endless tasks to do and to-do lists. I even have a to-do list that says, look at your to-do list. Sometimes filling our days with mindless tasks. In his book, Let It Be Easy, author Tolly Birkin gave us simple actions to create an extraordinary life. He had developed 4 strategies for us to consider. 1 is to speak the truth. 2 is to ask for what we want. 3 is to keep our agreements. And 4 is to take responsibility for our experiences.
So let's take a look at the first one, and that's speak the truth. Sounds like it should be pretty simple, right? Well, let's go to my favorite person, Webster. And Webster says that truth is a transcendent, fundamental, or spiritual reality. I can buy into that. It also says that it is sincerity in action, character, and utterance, right? Be sincere in what you do, how you do it, and how you say it. But of all the definitions I found, the one that I like the best is from Charles Fillmore, Unity's co-founder, and he wrote this from Keep a True Lent. And it says, as the Christ radiance lights man's mind, he sees with an inner eye and he finds that truth is a never-failing light that makes straight his way. I'm going to read that one more time. As the Christ radiance lights man's mind, he sees with an inner eye, and he finds that truth is a never-failing light that makes straight his way. That one I like the best. And so when we describe our feelings or relate something that we have experienced, we are speaking the truth. I can't describe Anne's feelings. I've known her for a while now, and I can get pretty close. And I can't relate something that only Anne has experienced. I can only relate my truths, what I experience, and what I feel. Don Miguel Ruiz from The Four Agreements, many of you may have read that book a while back, talks about speaking your truth this way. He calls it being impeccable with your word. And he goes on to describe that your word is the power that you have to create, and that this power only comes from the divinity within you, nowhere else. It's through your word, your truth, that you manifest every single thing in your life. We can manifest good with that truth, or we can manifest destruction. And so it becomes very important for us to only state accurate facts. If there's any fishermen out here, no exaggerations and no embellishments. That's a tough one, because don't we all like to do that? You know, the story gets better every time you tell it. But if we only speak our truth, people will start to recognize our integrity, and they'll start to respect us for who we are.
The next suggestion that Birkin has is that we ask for what we want. So why is it important to ask for what you want? We're more likely to receive it when we ask for it rather than just being passive and expecting it to come our way, unspoken, unbidden. Asking for what we want demonstrates that we have a healthy degree of self-love. When we ask for what we want, it's helpful to be specific and limited. For example, will you help me clean the kitchen, which could be an endless task? Would you be willing to empty the dishwasher while I take care of these remaining dishes, please? It's easy to ask for simple things like pass the butter, but why don't we ask for more important things? Often we don't know what we want, or we feel unworthy. We don't want to be obligated to another person who's done us a favor. We fear we'll be turned down, and nobody wants to be rejected. Sometimes we forget we can ask silently through prayer.
So once we have learned to speak our truth and ask for what we want, then we're ready for the third strategy of let it be easy, and that's simply keep your agreements. If we aren't truthful and we can't say what we want or need, how can we make agreements and keep them? And that's because keeping agreements is built on the value of trust. If people can't trust that we're going to keep our agreements, don't you think they're going to feel disrespected and maybe a little bit betrayed? And you know from experience that if you can keep an agreement with yourself, like I'm going to walk tomorrow morning at 7:30 regardless, yeah, then we know when we've broken an agreement. And so, for example, Ann and I agreed to speak here today. If I had called Judy this morning at 9 o'clock and said, oops, sorry, we can't make it, we would have broken our agreement. But sometimes we have to break agreements. If we'd been in a car accident on the way, certainly we wouldn't have been able to be here. But the important thing in remembering about keeping our agreements is that as soon as we know that we're not going to be able to keep that commitment, to keep that agreement, then we simply need to notify the person involved that we can't keep our commitment.
The last thing that Birkin suggests we do is take responsibility for our experiences. How many of you remember Flip Wilson? Yeah, and what did Flip used to say? The devil made me do it? Yeah, didn't he say that? Yeah, and how often do we say, just casually, he or she made me do it, or the rain made me do it? And it may come suddenly, like she said, and I felt, she made me feel. She made me feel upset, she made me feel angry, she made me feel afraid. Well, we create our own experiences. External events are just stimulating situations. They provoke a response in us, but it's our response. We may not have control over the event, but we do have control over how we react and respond. As soon as we stop blaming others, we can start seeing from a different perspective, and we can change any experience, guilt, regret, anger, or hurt. Sometimes we need help, called therapy, but therapy is all about releasing the experience and changing our perspective. Why do we allow ourselves to feel like victims? Perhaps it's something in our past that hurt us, and when similar things happen, we find ourselves back in that place in time, and the new event simply triggers something inside of us. A wise philosopher and psychologist said, "It's too late to have a happy childhood." There's a Trisha Yearwood song called "The Woman Before You and Me." The words read, "The woman before me must have been hard on you, 'cause that hurt in your eyes I never put you through. Sometimes I think you must be talking to the woman before me and you." That verse could also be a friend before me and you that's hurt us, a boss before me and you that's made our life very difficult. You get the idea.
So what are some things that we can do to let it be easy? First of all, Ann and I have some little cards with these 4 strategies on there, and they'll be passed out for you after the offering, so you can, put it on the door before you go outside, or on your bathroom mirror, or wherever it is that you want, so that you can remember the steps. The next thing is be gentle with yourself when you're learning these new steps. There's no need to try to force them, but simply start increasing your awareness of what the steps are. Remember that trying to force things doesn't work. You certainly can't force a rosebud to open, or to force a butterfly out of its cocoon before it's ready. Next, monitor what you say. We have this great tool, it's called the witness, in our brain, that allows us to be present and hear what we're saying to others and to ourselves. And so when you find yourself doing that, say something like this out loud. So if you find yourself not telling the truth, or stretching the truth, or embellishing it, exaggerating, simply say something like, "Yeah, actually that wasn't totally true. It was more like this." Pretty simple. And then if you're speaking with someone who is relating an experience that may not be their own, you can simply ask them, "Is that accurate information?" It's not a threatening question. It's simply asking, where's your information come from? Is that accurate? Practice asking for simple things first. For some of us, that's very hard, especially with family. I have a sister that's very hard for me to ask for what I want. And so, but when you do that, when you're able to ask for what you want, notice how you feel afterwards. Don't you feel more empowered? Allow for the unexpected when you're making commitments. Allow for those contingencies. And stop visualizing yourself as a victim. Because this only makes us feel helpless. Remember that we always have a choice on how to react when something happens to us. Because it's not what happens to us that matters. It's our inner response to that outside stimulus that generates your feelings, that generates your actions. So, 4 simple ideas. Speak the truth. Ask for what you want. Keep your agreements. Take responsibility for your life. So if we embrace these 4 simple ideas, these 4 simple strategies, we can live a life that's easier. And we can also eliminate some things that we don't want. That's Unity's 12 powers. It's called release. It's to let go of those thoughts and beliefs that are no longer serving us. Maybe they worked for us last year. But are they serving us today? Can we let go of them? So our quality of life can be better. We can feel a stronger sense of ease and well-being. Our relationships can be better. And we can become more conscious and more conscientious so that we can get the most out of this life that we're living.
So there's my son. He's 10 years old, and he wants a raise in his allowance. And so I said, so what are you going to do for it? And he said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, how about if you empty the dishwasher? Because I hate to empty the dishwasher when it's full. And you could empty it, and that would be a great help to me. So I'm asking for what I want. Well, he decided that was okay. And he started to empty the dishwasher. And after about 3 weeks, I got a little upset because he kept banging the dishes around. I was worried about their chipping. And he insisted on doing, or he didn't insist, he just did the dishwasher while I was fixing dinner. So there was not a handy time for him to do that work. And I finally said, this isn't working for me. I don't think it will be. And he said, well, how about if I do my laundry? And I said, what a great idea, because his idea of picking up his room was to throw all the clean clothes in with the dirty clothes rather than putting them away. And so I said, I'll show you how to use the washing machine and you can do your laundry. So he thought that was a pretty good idea, because that way he'd have clean clothes when he wanted them and didn't have to wait for me to get onto laundry day. So he decided that he would do the laundry. And after about 3 months of that, he said, well, I'm tired of doing my laundry. I don't want to do this anymore. And I said, tough beans, you made that agreement, you need to keep that agreement. And he eventually found out that if he kept that agreement, if he did his wash, if he did his laundry, he'd have clean clothes sooner. It's like, took him a while, he was only 10. He realized that he could keep that agreement and continue to do his laundry. So in this scene, you have 4 simple ideas. You have speaking the truth, where I said, this isn't working for me. It's time to do something else. Asking for what we want. So I asked for him to do the dishwasher, and he didn't want to do that, or wasn't very successful. But he asked to do the laundry. So I thought that was pretty fair. Keep your agreements. I insisted that he keep that agreement that he was going to do his laundry. And he eventually took responsibility for that and ended up with clean clothes.
Matthew Joseph Thaddeus Stepanek, known as Matty, was an American author and inspirational speaker. He published 7 books of poetry and essays on peace, several of which appeared in the New York Times bestseller list. Matty died at the age of 13. He wanted to be remembered as a poet, a peacemaker, and a philosopher who played. This poem is called Peace Prescription, and it was written in 2002 when Matty was 11. And so in closing, Anne and I would like to share this poem with you.
When we hurt one another with our words, with our actions, or even with our thoughts, it causes a wound.
Some wounds are seen. Some wounds are invisible. Some wounds heal. Some wounds leave a scar.
And some wounds, especially those that are inflicted or opened again and again and again, may never heal. Let us take care then not to hurt one another with our words, with our actions, or even with our thoughts.
And let us take special care in realizing and tending to the wounds that already exist, or they could infect others and cause an epidemic. Namaste.